Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the fifth in our conversation series, The Fightback, which profiles social entrepreneurs who have played a leading role in tackling the social and environmental fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Dr. Patrick Patak, and I'm the director of the Social Impact Lab, the University of Southampton's community for students to gain knowledge, build skills, and learn through experience to lead sustainable social change. This evening, I am so delighted to welcome an outstanding social entrepreneur and friend of the Social Impact Lab, Trina Talukdar. Trina started working in Calicut, one of Asia's oldest and largest red light areas, at the age of 18. Her interaction with commercial sex workers spurred her passion to channel an immense strength and potential she saw in these women towards becoming the best social change leaders of our times. As a result of her experience in Calicut, she co-founded a non-profit called Kranti at the age of 22 in Mumbai. 22, this is incredible. I'm going to have an anxiety attack about just how young you are, Trina, right now.
Oh, I'm really old now. That was a long time ago.
You're about 30, you're 30, right? Less than 30.
I'm 33. I'm 33.
Still, you're a baby. You're a baby.
Everything above 30 is the same, then it doesn't matter. I'm on the dark side now.
Okay, you're on the dark side. Join us. Kranti identifies the potential in girls who have been trafficked to become agents of social change. These women have survived the worst social adversities and have the passion and understanding to solve these social problems. After building Kranti for 3 years, Trina moved to Ashoka, where she was hired as a South Asia Director of Venture and Fellowship and focused on building a social entrepreneurship ecosystem in India. During her time in Ashoka, Trina continued to work with Kranti from time to time. In 2019, after 6 years away, Trina made the decision to return to Kranti and is now employed full-time with the non-profit organization. Trina, welcome to the Fightback.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
I'm delighted to have you here. I guess we have to start with what is top of everyone's mind right now. We just had a conversation just before we went live about what's happening where you are in India right now. Could you just tell us how it seems, at least from the outside, that the situation in India is dire and desperate? What is it like? What is it like to be there right now? And what's it like where you are?
The situation truly is dire. I won't lie about it. Like I was telling you right before we started this conversation, that's all we talk about. Every conversation we're having is like someone needs an oxygen cylinder, someone else passed away. So my personal experience is, that's all that's on top of everyone's minds, and it's a crisis that doesn't seem to pass. And keep in mind that I think whatever you are hearing or even we are hearing within India is still underreported. For sure. And the margin is debatable, but it's underreported for sure, right? And then from the perspective of Kranti, we did a lot of relief work in the red light area last year. And this year we're not able to because it's so dangerous. Like we can't have our girls go out and do relief work like they did last time, because it's so dangerous. But we're getting calls from the sex workers and we are hearing that, people truly are leaving dead bodies by the side of the road because they can't get hospital beds, they can't get a death certificate without it, and without a death certificate, you can't cremate them in the electric thing that's used to. And the municipality is picking up dead bodies and burying them. There's Vice News photographic evidence that's being dug up. But personally, I and everyone at Kranti is safe. A couple of our girls have gotten COVID, but they have recovered. That had to happen, given percentages. But we are grateful. We all have a home. We have food to eat, so we're grateful.
Sure.
Sorry.
That's okay. So and you're in Goa right now. And
I am in Goa.
And Goa's gone into lockdown, hasn't it, today?
Yes, as of 2.5 hours ago.
Okay. And what's that like? What does that? I mean,
Um,
in the UK, lockdown means everything shuts.
yeah,
Supermarkets, essential shops open. Is that the case in
exactly.
Goa?
Exactly. Yeah. So essential shops are open only from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And the rest of the time, everything is shut down. State borders are shut as well. So you can't go in and out unless you have like an emergency, like literally a death certificate or something.
Okay.
So yeah, but and it needed to be done. I think most people actually relieved for it.
Yeah. And you said that officially the lockdown is for a week. Is that right? And but
For 5 days
for
till
5 days.
Monday, yeah. And then, but most of us feel like it'll likely get extended because what is 4 days really gonna do?
Right. And have they said what would be? Have they said like there'll be a target? And for example, if number of COVID deaths goes down to this level, then we'll
No, no, no.
release lockdown.
There isn't clarity around that.
Okay.
It's hard to predict. I mean, I think even if anyone put any numbers out, I would look at them
Yeah.
with a lot of doubt. I mean, it's really impossible to tell. It's impossible to tell what the death rate is, what the actual numbers are. Like, journalists have waited outside crematoriums and like counted bodies, and it's literally 10x of reported numbers. So, and maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle or more, who knows? But
Yeah. Exactly.
it's hard. My point is, it's hard to put any numbers out there. I think.
Absolutely. And you've been in lockdown, or forms of the pandemic has been going on for about over a year now. How has it been for you, these varying stages? Because I guess with India, it's a bit like the UK. Well, it's not it's not like the UK, where we had a very heavy first wave, and then a kind of a lull, and then a very heavy second and a heavier third wave. Or maybe second wave, depending on how you choose to categorize the waves. Lots of waves, overlapping waves.
Hardly matters the
It hardly
name of
matters.
it.
It's all merging into one. But for you, how's it been? Has it been? What's been the hardest phase for you?
I think right now, for sure. And it just seems to be getting worse and not any better. And I think so. Like last year, of course, the lockdown happened, and all the girls, all of our girls at Kranti are at different schools and college campuses around India and the world. Three of them in the US, and one of them in Italy, which was such a hotbed in
Yeah.
March, April last year. We managed to get all the girls in India back home to Mumbai and keep them safe. And nobody got sick. And we were doing all this relief work every day, distributing food and grains in the red light area. So it was fine. I think we coped well as we could,
Yeah.
and the girls made something out of it. And then I think things started normalizing. It's the mistake so many countries have done, right? The moment it goes down a little bit, everything got relaxed. So all our girls went back to their school and college campuses around post Diwali, so like Novemberish, Decemberish last year, if not by January. And then suddenly, like a couple of weeks ago, we got 3-4 days notice to clear out of campuses and get everyone back.
Wow.
And so like I was just like a logistics planner for 2 weeks, just like getting universities, like calling up university administrators to be like, can you please get her RT-PCR report so she can have a report to fly back, and the girls were. But I think the biggest thing has been the impact on mental health. I
Yeah.
mean, forget all of this logistical moving around academics. I mean, I don't even know how the girls have kept that academics up, honestly. But they all have, which is amazing. But there is a huge toll on their mental health from all the uncertainty and the confusion. And some of them are taking their high school finals, and it's really like formative moments of their life. Like a lot of the Kranti girls come and stay with me in Goa all the time, and 6-7 of them have come and stayed with me at a time, and they're just all doing online classes from here. A whole bunch of them, they're about to finish their first year of college and they've never been to college.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think that, and then of course, like talking to their mothers or family back in the red light area and hearing what's going on there and yet being helpless. I mean, that has a huge toll on mental health. And I think that's has been the biggest impact.
Absolutely. Yeah. Makes sense. And obviously that's, I guess, and we'll talk about, I guess it's better to explain the Kranti model first before we talk about why going to college is such a big
Mm,
event in these girls' lives. So
absolutely.
should we just talk, should
Breaks
we
my heart.
go back to
Sure.
to you when you were 22 in Mumbai, and how did Kranti start, and what's been the journey so far?
So, so I have two co-founders, Robin Chaurasia and Bani Das, and all three of us were interested or working in or volunteering in anti-trafficking organ. Like, I had my own story coming from the red light area in Calcutta, and I wanted to learn what to do with that community of sex workers. And so I was doing, going between a few organizations. So the three of us met, actually, like, ran into each other between these anti-trafficking organizations. And the three of us just felt very similarly that there is a huge potential that we individually saw in these girls rescued from trafficking or girls growing up in the red light area, daughters of sex workers, but we saw no investment in this potential. So, for example, no one was investing in their long-term education or even mental health and well-being, and definitely not investing in their leadership to be those leaders who go back to their communities and bring change in them. And that was like beyond anyone's thinking. And maybe at that point it was for us too, but we were like, at least these girls should have the chance to say, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a astronaut, anything that they want to be. And their option shouldn't just be to make candle and pickle, or at best like work in a mall or a cafe like that. It's not fair to limit their potential in that way. And those were all the opportunities being given to them, even in the best case scenarios, through the sector at that point. And that's why we said, okay, we'll start our own. And I think all of us being young really helped, because young is stupid. I mean, we all talk about it now. We always say, if we knew what we know today about how hard it is going to be, we would never do it. But it helped that we were young. Um, but that's where we started, and we first said that, Kranti is going to be the space where these girls can come in and they can choose to be and do whatever they want to do, and it is our job as Kranti to find them the opportunities to do those things.
Right.
And but when we asked the girls, what do you want to do, they would say, I want to be a teacher and teach the children of sex workers, because no one admits us in school, and like maybe that's her experience, maybe that's her friend's experience, right? And they would say, I want to be a doctor, but work with sex workers, because doctors sometimes don't want to touch us because they think we have STDs or whatever superstitions they have. And so I think then our Vision 2.0 really came from the girls. And Vision 2.0 was like, these girls, their adversity is their strength in a way, because the challenges they faced is what makes them very passionate about going back and solving those problems, and b an in-depth knowledge of that issue, right? I mean, think about, well, I consider myself privileged, right? And I had access to great education growing up. So so I will never understand truly the problems of access to education. I would have to spend years doing research and living in those communities to learn any of this, right? So why are we not making use of the resource we have, which are people in these communities who already have the passion, understanding, trust of the community, everything? Why aren't we investing in them to be the leaders, right? Why are we still only looking at like our urban elite colleges and for our leaders to come from there? And I think then and now the idea of our next generation of leaders coming from the most marginalized backgrounds is still revolutionary, which is
Yeah.
what Kranti means revolution.
Yes. That's amazing. I mean, that's such a global issue as well. I mean, we talk about this all the time. I mean, even in the UK, this idea that social entrepreneurship seems to be monopolized by middle class people with privilege who have gone to universities and who have access to incubators and programs and the rest of it, when actually lived experience is marginalized so much. And yet, there is the stereotype of the university student who says, I want to help farmers in Kenya, having known nothing about farming or never been to Kenya. But this is,
I love doing this. I've been to the US a lot more than I've been to the UK. So that's more of my experience. And I love I love going to the US. And when people ask me why I'm there, I love saying I've come to solve gun control. and they're like, what? That's so weird. I was like, oh, is that weird? And that's what it is for us all the time. Also, it's like a lot of people from the US, especially, who are like, I'm here to solve poverty in India.
Yes. I mean, I mean, in the ecosystem in India, I mean, we both spent a lot of time in India, and we
Yeah,
know
yeah.
the influx of people who come from the UK and the US. Uh,
Mm.
and and so Kranti, I guess, is so revolutionary, which is, it's revolutionary in the model of saying if we're looking for social entrepreneurs, they have to be the ones with lived experience. And that is the catalyst for real change. Is there have you found when you talk about Kranti, have you found that there are barriers to the credibility of the model where people say, because I guess in some ways we think it's an open door, we think this makes sense to us, but has there ever been a point in which there's been some kind of pushback to the Kranti model, or has it been?
Of course, I think as a society, we don't believe that people who come from marginalized backgrounds, and specifically girls from the red light area, that's possibly like bottom of the pyramid, like
Yeah,
the most marginalized. They're also like all from lower caste because that's where poverty is, and that's where trafficking happens, and it's all a chain, right? So I think the biggest barrier is as a society, we don't believe that this population has the potential to be leaders. Forget leaders. We don't believe that they have we think that the best case scenario is they become maybe like drivers, work in a cafe, work as domestic help,
yeah,
or like sewing, making pickle, beauty parlor, all of these things that are very common. I don't know if you know of the stereotype in India, or if you have this in the UK, but in terms of like rehabilitation, it always is like make pickle, papad, do
yeah,
embroidery, like that sort of seen as the potential of women. And I think that belief that society has is our biggest barrier, right? And it shows up in ways like when we take our girls to schools, the schools don't want to admit them because they're always like they can't cope,
yeah.
right?
Okay.
But so that's an example, right? And
Hmm.
then another example of that is we have a really difficult time finding housing in Bombay because they just think, oh, because they're girls from the red light area, they're going to be, I don't know, they're not
Yeah.
going to have moral values or something that, so that shows up in these kind of ways. But I think the good news is that over the last 10 years, we have now done good enough work to overcome some of those barriers. Like today, our girls go to the most expensive schools and colleges and boarding schools in India with some of the most privileged children on full scholarships because of their merit.
Hmm.
And I think those schools have changed their minds about what they used to believe the potential of these girls
Yeah.
are. So, yeah, I think the answer to your question is yes, lots of social mindset barriers, but I do see that things are changing and it gives me hope.
That's great. I mean, can we talk about the girls themselves? And in the UK, we have this idea of this notion of aspirational poverty, that people from marginalized backgrounds, they struggle to imagine themselves in roles that they can't see. There's that phrase, you can't be what you can't see. And this idea that if you grow up in a marginalized environment where, as you say, everyone around you in your immediate peer circle, your parents, everyone else, they're working they're working as cleaners, or they're
Mm-hmm.
working in factory
Yeah,
jobs or menial labor.
yeah.
It's really difficult for you then to imagine yourself doing
Mm-hmm.
something else.
Right.
I mean, I'm guessing for the Kranti
Of
model,
course.
when you started, there was that barrier, but now you've had so many girls who have gone to college in India and abroad. So has that shifted? Has that barrier has that lowered somewhat?
I certainly believe so. And I think that was our, not, I mean, that was our intention all along. And we've always been very small at Kranti, right? Like we've had one home, we've worked with 35 girls at a time. We've kept it small because our intention was never just the impact on these girls. Our intention was always impacting social mindsets and what society believes these girls are capable of, but also what these girls believe they're capable of. What any marginalized child in India believes they're capable of, there because of them. And therefore, like if we have spent a lot of time and energy strategically to like put the girl stories out in media as much as possible. And I think like if you do any searches on Kranti or whatever, you'll find that we've done a pretty good, because getting the message out has been equally important to us as the growth of the girls themselves,
Yeah.
exactly for the reason that you're talking about,
Yeah.
that these communities need to see other people go to college, come back to their communities, be leaders, to believe that they can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. And I guess the thing about the Kranti model is your curriculum is so wide ranging. So it isn't just a formal curricula. They're not just learning academic, but it's such a whole person education model, isn't it? And
Yeah.
was that always there at the start, or is that something that has developed over time?
Um, so let me talk about all the elements of the program that the girls, go through and experience, that I think. So when they come in, we have a huge focus on mental well-being. Because you can imagine the amount of trauma they have come from, and unless we can, help them heal from their trauma and be emotionally stable, we can't do anything else. We realize we can't do education while a girl has PTSD, for example, right? So all of our girls have one-on-one therapists that they see weekly, and then over years they maybe taper off. And they also do various kinds of group therapy, like art therapy or movement therapy. And over time, girls find something that really works for them, like music therapy is something that's worked very well for some girls, art for some others. We do yoga and meditation in the house every morning. That's how we start. So there's a big focus on physical and mental well-being. And then, of course, the second thing is we admit them into mainstream schools and colleges, unless, I mean, often, like, a couple of years ago, we had a girl who was originally trafficked from Bangladesh come to us, who was 14, but she had never gone to school. So we can't put a 14-year-old in a grade one classroom, right? And if there's a situation like that, which does happen, then we home tutor them. And usually by high school or college, then we can integrate them into the mainstream education system. The third thing is the girls all do various extracurricular activities based on their, they do dance, art, origami, like a bunch of things they're interested in. We've been lucky to find some lovely volunteers who help with a lot of this. And then finally, and we really believe this is our magic sauce, so to say, is we have this leadership and social justice education curriculum, which has two parts. One, the social justice education, where we talk to the girls and learn together with them about everything from Black Lives Matters to India-Pakistan conflict to LGBTQ issues. And the other part of the curriculum is all the skills we believe they need to have to be leaders, right? So this is like leadership, critical thinking, creative problem solving, teamwork, conflict resolution, so on and so forth. And so we feel like this is what it's a combination of the focus on well-being, which is absolutely always going to be necessary, along with mainstream education, which builds your basics, and but then our curriculum is what really transforms them to leaders, to the leaders that they are today. And I feel like I kept saying this throughout this without giving some examples of what I mean by that. So I should probably talk about some of my girls. So some of my girls are, they are music therapists for other children who faced abuse. A couple of them, they work with other organizations and nonprofits that work with sex workers. Um, One of them works with the transgender community. One of them is an art therapist for children with terminal illness. So while children who are taking chemo, etc., are waiting their turn, she does art therapy with them in the hospital. A couple of our girls are very interested and they're working at animal care shelters. And especially at right before the lockdown happened in Bombay, they were still working at an animal care center. And because the animal care shelters were also overcrowded because families have COVID and they need like a animal care shelter to take care of their pet for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And so they were working there. So all our girls work on various social change issues that and the purpose of this curriculum really is that by the time they're ready to make that decision on what they want to work, they know what is going on in all of these various issues, what's happening in LGBTQ issues, what are the problems, what are the needs, and they have the skills to then go choose to do what they want to do.
Wow, that's incredible. it's so heartening to see how they're going into these social justice careers, welfare careers after everything they've been through, and the curriculum is obviously a
I
big
think
part.
especially, I think the whole point I'm trying to make is especially because they've been through it, not
Yeah,
in spite of.
yeah, yeah. And that's the point about that lived experience kind of primes you to live that life, that kind of selfless life of service,
Exactly.
which is amazing, amazing. So let's talk about the COVID relief efforts. How did that start? Because that just seems,
Um,
yeah, like something you wouldn't expect. And how did it start?
yeah, our girls surprises in the best way. So actually, it was last year when lockdown was just announced. This was still like end of March, beginning of April, and we got calls. The girls, have family, and their mothers in the red light area about how of course, they can't work, and they're basically without an income, and they are daily wage laborers as well, but sort of invisible daily wage laborers. Like when we say daily wage, when there was a lot of conversation in India about daily wage laborers and giving them relief and direct cash transfers to their bank accounts, etc. But sex workers are invisible in that population, right? Like they mean more like daily wage construction workers and things like that. But so sex workers had absolutely no access to government relief, and they had no work, and they're very. I mean, even civil efforts to crowdfund and help people, like no one that really does for sex workers because they're taboo associated and they're fairly invisible that way. And so our girls basically started getting calls from other people in the community, and they said, we're gonna go distribute as much as we can. And so the girls started doing various classes online. Like one of our girls is a certified Zumba instructor. One of our girls is doing a master's in Buddhism. So, she led meditation classes. One of our girls is studying yoga. So she led yoga classes. And so people joined these classes and basically donated to do these classes. And the girls used that money to provide both cooked meals as well as dry groceries in the red light area. Cooked meals because a lot of the families, I mean, in a red light area, usually there's just like a big room and lots of bunk beds and a bunch of people staying there. So, like, some of them don't have kitchens, and usually they're used to eating on like the roadside cart kind of thing, right? Which isn't open now. So even giving dry grains to some people wouldn't help. They needed cooked food. So for 100 days, which is 3 months and a little bit more, my dogs are growling. I apologize.
I was hoping it was a dog.
Yeah. My dogs are. Um, so for 3 months, a little more than 3 months, the girls cooked and served food, more than 200 meals every day.
Wow.
So, but that was last year, and I really wish we could do more this year. But it's too dangerous, and yeah, to even really go out there. People are now saying do double masking, so you just don't know. And now it's airborne. So I wish we could do more relief work this year, but it just.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's amazing is just how self-sufficient that model was, that they were employing the skills that they gained to then help fund their work.
And I think it was the best proof of concept for the Kranti model
Mm,
because it showed a why it's so important to have leaders from the community, because it took these girls who are from the community to know and understand its needs and really go do this work, right? Because other civil efforts, government had all forgotten about it, right? So A, it shows why it's so important to have leaders from the community, and B, it shows that we truly have been able to transform our girls into social change leaders because they really just took this on themselves and led it and did this.
yeah. Brilliant. So it's obviously, as we said, it's been a year of the pandemic at least, I suppose. Has it changed the Kranti model? Because Kranti, as you said, Kranti, I mean, having been to the Kranti home, it's a very physical kind of experience of the girls living together, of it being a community, a really physical community. Now you're dispersed, and I guess in some ways that happens because the girls go to colleges, and so they're that network is still there, but a bit looser. But now, does it feel like? Firstly, does it feel like the work is harder? And secondly, is there anything other changes to the way that Kranti operates that you'll be taking forward? Um, Say, imagine all the restrictions are lifted. Would you go back to how things were, or are there things that have changed that you think
I
you'll?
mean, I think the only difference has been that the house, the Kranti home we have in Bombay, has been more crowded than usual. Because usually all the girls that are away in school college, and there's maybe about 8 to 10 girls living in the house in Mumbai.
Yeah.
But now there were like 35 through all of last
Oh,
year. Or yeah, yeah. Um, and but that is not, I mean, that was challenging because the girls don't have, like, their space. I mean, they're all doing their different classes online, and everything is going on, and there just wasn't enough space, emotionally or physically, for everyone. So I don't think I mean, we're dying to go back to when things hopefully ever go back to normal, and the girls can be in their school colleges, etc. And I think, like, the fact that our girls go out and have these independent living experiences with the outside world, so to say,
yeah.
is really good for reintegration into society,
Yeah.
whatever we might
Yeah.
call it as a mission. And it makes the community richer. Like, our girls, their family, and they go out and have these other experiences and live with the world outside, and they bring that back, and that's really important. So I don't think we'd ever want to
Okay.
keep everyone
Brilliant.
together physically, anything like that.
Okay. Great. So, for those of you who've just tuned in, this is the Fight Back from the University of Southampton Social Impact Lab, and we're in conversation with Trina Talukdar, talking about Kranti's work and their COVID relief work. Please, if you have any questions or comments, do post them in the chat. We're now just going to change tack a little bit and talk about your new baby, Bulti Band, which I guess if we're talking about it if we're doing a direct translation, maybe it would be shut up. But
Yeah,
but stop,
unfortunately, we've
but
really
stop
tried to
talking.
find better translations, but unfortunately, it does translate to shut up. But I mean, I'll try to explain my way out of it over the next few
All right,
questions.
all right, all right. I mean, it could also be, yeah, stop talking, which is a bit more polite, but probably not quite in the spirit.
Doesn't have the bang, yeah.
Doesn't have the bang, does it really? What and because your mission is to depoliticize political dialogue, can you
Depolarize.
what sparked that for you? I mean, how did that start?
I think so I have a co-founder, her name is Janvi, and we started both the month together. And I think for both of us, the reason for starting it came from a very personal space where we felt we as individuals weren't able to have conversations about issues that were really important to us, like gender, patriarchy, um, politics, voting. And we couldn't talk about these issues with some of our closest friends and family because the moment we don't agree, it becomes so aggressive, and the best case scenario almost is, let's never talk about this again. And So we started thinking, like, there has to be another way to be able to talk about these issues we disagree on without it ending up in hatred, walking away, yelling, or any of these things that it always is. And I'm talking in person. I mean, online it's even more vicious, it. So we said there has to be a better way to have these conversations. And so we started researching mostly in India, but a little bit abroad as well. Like, what is broadly, say, happening in the conflict resolution, conflict transformation, mediation, that kind of space, right? So we said, okay, like, what's happening? And what we found, I think, and this really speaks more for India, I don't think I can speak globally, but this is where we found that the conflict resolution space is, right? Where, say, you and I disagree about X, and the conflict resolution will be that let's agree on Y and we'll bond on that. I'll give you examples, right? India, Pakistan, terrible politics. Forever, our peacemaking effort has been cricket matches between the two countries, right? But the problem with that is we are still ignoring, and you'll hear this very often, the language, find common ground.
Mm.
Right? So you disagree about X, then you find something that's common, Y. But the problem with that is we're not addressing X. We are just sort of brushing it under the table with that, right? Like, of course, cricket matches between India and Pakistan have not helped our political conflict in the least. Um, so we said, okay, so it doesn't that so where the space is currently is not exactly working right now because polarization is also so high. So I
Right.
feel like no methodologies we might have so far works in this situation anymore. But anyway, so then we said, okay, what then? How can we find a way to talk about the uncommon ground? So
Mm.
not the common ground common. How can we find a way to actually talk about what we disagree on that doesn't become a debate? Because a debate is useless for many reasons, right? I mean, there's so much science to prove that we don't really change our minds, right? There's Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow is a book which talks about how our brains are wired to ignore facts. So because no one walked out of a debate and said, "Oh, I understand your point. I think I agree with you now." Like that has basically never happened, no matter how great the point and the facts of the other person, right? So a debate is a useless mode of communication because no one's changing their mind, and b it becomes this I'm right, you're wrong, therefore aggressive, therefore a conflict, and therefore the best case situation is we don't even talk about it. The worst case situation is we kill each other.
Yeah.
Um, and so we said, okay, then if it's a debate is a conversation about what,
Mm.
right? So let's say the media shutdown that happened in Kashmir for over a year last year that I'm sure all of you heard of in India. So usually when we talk about, or say the farmer protests that have been happening in India for 150 days now, right? Whenever if we would, in normal circumstances, if you and I would talk about it, like maybe I would say that, you know, I don't believe in the farmer protests because the laws that they're trying to pass is actually really good, right? And the other person might say, I believe in the farmer protest because farmers know what's best for themselves. And they should have laws according to what they want. So in both these situations, we are talking about what we believe in, right? And what we try to do at both the one is move that conversation to why we believe what we do. And then this is what the conversation looks like. Instead of saying about the farmer protest that I think the laws are right because this percentage of income, etc., which is all the what. Instead, I would say that I grew up in a business family and we have this huge dependency on farmers, and I always was told that I was ripped off, that the farmers rip us off, and
Mm.
I think we need laws to regulate that,
Mm.
right? And the other person might say that either maybe they are from a farming family, but maybe they're not, and they're just they have they've experienced that and they've gone and hurt farmers. And like we've done these dialogues on the ground that's about farmer protests, and someone said that I got caught in a different protest and I didn't want to be part of that, and I was actually part of this like shoving and police arrest without being tried. It was a traumatic experience for me, so I don't believe in protests from there on, right? No matter what the issue.
Mm.
And the thing is, when you have this conversation, you still don't have to agree. But I think it's very difficult to respond to this answer with "you deserve to die," say a bunch of swear words, say go to Pakistan. Because the problem in society today we're facing, the problem with polarization is, I mean, consensus is a myth. So
Mm.
difference of opinion is not our problem. Our
Mm.
problem is the extreme reactions we are having to a difference of opinion today. Today we're saying if you believe differently from me, you don't deserve to live in the country, you deserve to die, you deserve to be beaten up, right? And that's the problem. And I feel like when we have been able to move the conversation to why we believe what we do, what are the life experiences that I've had that have shaped me to have that belief or opinion. It's like if I tell you that, man, I got caught in this protest, it was horrible, I was in a stampede, I was injured, the police arrested me, and I'm traumatized by that. So I'm anxious when I see protests. That's why I don't believe in them. You can't come back to that with I want to beat you up. It's
Yeah.
hard to hate that once
Yeah.
we know them, I think.
That's,
And that's the core of the work we do.
mm.
We are trying to build the muscle, in the social muscle in people, to be able to talk about why we believe what we do.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and it makes me think there's this real understanding of why empathy is so important. But as you said, it's hard to empathize with someone's a very abstract position. It's much easier to empathize with someone who is, when you hear that why, and you hear that it's linked to their life story, or as you said, some kind of a history of belief that they've inherited, or that it's very difficult to empathize with that. So is it empathy a big part of it, or does it fit into the
No,
methodology?
I think it's entirely about empathy. And I just avoid using that word because it's been overused and it's all over, and I don't think everyone agrees on the meaning of it and
Mm,
all of those things. So I just avoid using it because it almost become jargon now, But no, it exactly basically is about building empathy. And I think the biggest thing for me doing this whole thing is how much empathy I feel like I have learned.
mm,
For example, I think I used to think my boundary is men who are sexual abusers or support that, right? I was like, okay, I can understand everyone. Like I can be calm and have this like conversation about climate change with the climate change denier and all of that I can do. But if it comes to someone who's say victim blaming in front of me or any of that, then I can never stand for that and I can't empathize with that person ever, and they're the worst. But through the work I have done, I've had conversations with so many men who basically come and said that, in the place I grew up, in these rural areas or small towns, we had girls wouldn't be friends with us. I was taught that the way to express to a girl that you are beautiful or I like you was to whistle at her,
yeah,
was to grab her ass.
yeah, yeah.
And now that you're telling me that it's wrong, oh my God, that's terrible. I'm so sorry. I won't do it. I have heard so many stories after stories after stories. That's that. And how do I hate that anymore?
Mm, yeah, 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 yeah,
So I think, yes, it's exactly about empathy for me and for everyone
yeah.
I work with.
I mean, it makes me think a lot of, as you said, that very instinctive reaction we have to certain people, and even sometimes before we even hear them and we see them. For me, for example, if I see a skinhead on the street with a
Hmm.
army surplus jacket and Doc Martens, and it's very difficult for me to even, that bias is so strongly ingrained that even before they speak, even regardless of what they're saying, I'm primed to think to be hostile,
Mm-hmm.
because I think they're going to be
Exactly.
hostile. And so that's, as you said, just unpeeling those layers from the what to the why can be
Mm-hmm.
really powerful. So it sounds exactly what the world needs, and obviously not just India, but every country that is riven by a populist government, or I mean, and not just those countries. It just seems to be that we're polarized globally anyway. Um, we're thinking about the US of obviously during the Trump era, but the UK during Brexit and beyond. It's such a live issue. And you had your first fellowship, didn't you? That finished. Did it finish recently? Is that
Yes, yes, we had our graduation on the 15th of March.
okay?
Um,
And how was
so,
that?
oh my God. So I should talk about the fellowship a little bit first. So the whole
Yeah.
point of the fellowship is, we spent about a year doing just on ground dialogues with different groups of people and trying out different methodologies and all of that. We used theater of the oppressed, and we took the traditional debate model, but said, to win, you have to make the other person say, I understand. So we
Mm,
just changed the incentive, and so we experimented with all these models. And then we finally said, okay, like I think this theory of change works. That if we can get people to talk about why they believe what they believe, we can depolarize.
yeah.
Um, and so then we said, but this muscle of being able to have this conversation with your absolute other, as we say, this muscle is important no matter what we do in today's age, right? If I'm a journalist, I need to be able to truly listen and understand people that I disagree with as a journalist, and my reporting will be better for it.
Mm,
If I'm a teacher, and I can have that conversation with parents and children that I disagree with, and there is a lot of conflict, I'll be a better teacher for it. I'll be a better therapist. I'll be a better parent, right? So no matter what we do.
mm,
So that was the point of the fellowship. We had 10 fellows, all from different sectors. One from climate change, someone was an artist, one of them was a teacher, one of them was a therapist, so on and so forth. One of them was a Dalit rights activist, um, and it was a 6-month fellowship where we did a lot of capacity building and workshops with them. We taught them these methodologies. We had lawyers coming in teaching mediation and teaching like other skills we all feel like can fit into this practice. We had someone who taught restorative justice practices to us, so on and so forth. And then the fellows had to do a project each which demonstrates how this lens of being able to listen to your other and having that conversation about why we believe what we believe, how that shows up in their work. So, for example, one of our fellows is a content creator, and he already had this podcast he does every week, every month, and he had like a 3,000 subscriber base already. And he basically transformed that podcast, where now every month the podcast is titled "What We Don't Understand About Dash." So, for example, the first month was "What We Don't Understand About Politics," and we spoke to Shweta Shalini, who's the official spokesperson of BJP, which is the ruling party in West Bengal. And so the whole point of these is, what we don't understand about Dash. Like, if you truly want to understand any of this, if you truly want to understand politics, the next one was what we don't understand about the internet, so on and so forth. So the whole point is like, to understand any of these, we have to listen to these people. And you don't have to agree with the official spokesperson of BJP. But if you truly want to understand politics, you got to listen to them. And basically that, on this note, I will finally explain our name. It's called Shut Up / Bolti Band because the silent tagline is "and start listening."
Amazing.
So yes, so the fellowship, the fellows graduated on 15th March, and for the first time, we all met each other after we'd been through a 6-month fellowship, because it was entirely virtual. We started in August when the COVID situation was, of course, still quite terrible. And so we met on 15th March, and we had a great graduation weekend, all of us together. And we did this graduation ceremony where we invited our funders, partners, everyone who had helped us do workshops and were facilitators for us, and some people from media. And on that occasion, we released this book, Pathik, which you have seen. It's called the Unheard Table book. Because people who go through the Bolti Band experience, our workshops, our fellows, anyone who's connected to our network, we call them the Heard, 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 because they've now been heard, they've been listened to. And so then who the people we want to work with, therefore, are the unheard. And so we have like a manifesto of the unheard. This is what all the unheard people want, right? We want to be listened to without judgment, so on and so forth. And so the book is called the Unheard Table book because it's basically the idea is that all of the people who've been unheard so far have now come together and are now on the table. They're getting a seat at the table to be heard. And so this book starts off with essays from sector experts on why the skill of listening to the other is so important. So one of the essays is, why do politicians need this skill? Another essay is, what is conflict resolution, etc. And so then it basically builds the case for why the work we do is so important. Then it explains the work we do. It has our impact report, graphs, numbers, for anyone who enjoys that stuff. And the most exciting part for me, the book ends with a toolkit on how we can start having these conversations on our own. So it has like a checklist on first make this sure the space is safe. Then it says, here are some questions you can ask. Here's what to say, what not to say. And so that toolkit for me is a really exciting part. And I think you have a copy. And for anyone who's listening to this and wants a soft copy, shout out, and I'd be happy to share one.
Amazing. Thank you, Trina. And we will, of course, if it's okay, we will post a link to it and we'll upload it to our website.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, please.
Download it, which would
absolutely.
Great. I suppose it's really, I guess the first thought is politicians desperately need this. Imagine in politics which wasn't as politicized, as polarized as it is, and it's an amazing thing. But secondly, I guess, as you said, the fellowship has just run. So I guess there's a longitudinal sense of this data that you have in terms of impact, because obviously there's that big bang of people understanding, there's this different way of having conversations, but it can be transformative in the long term, can't it? And just the way that we have conversations, the way that we interact, and you won't really know that until 6 months, a year afterwards. So that's
or more, if the world survives that long. But so I think what we're trying to do is work at it from a few different sides, because just one thing isn't going to be enough. And at this point, we are working at it from 3 sides that I'll talk about in a bit. But very welcome to ideas about a fourth and a fifth side. And the three things we're doing currently, first is the on ground dialogues. Second is the fellows, and how we see it as our on ground dialogues, like our direct service. That's how we learn, that's how we have direct impact on the ground. And then the fellowship is more like impact into systems, because that's how we're getting to the system of journalism, because we've done trainings for like journalist networks on how to like listen and ask questions in this manner. So that's our work with systems. So the first is direct service, then systems, and finally, and this is the vertical we do least of currently because we don't have time, but to create alternate media and content, because currently all media and content is one-sided.
Yeah.
Right? It could be on either side, but it has only a side. And we want to produce parallel content that is, every story reported from the side of two people who disagree on it and why. And we have done this a very little bit on our website. So I think you have a website. I hope you can circulate it. It's boltiband.org.
Yeah.
And so, for example, the Ayodhya Verdict, which I don't know if this audience is familiar with, but basically it was a very long running religious conflict over a piece of land, and if it belonged to a Hindu temple or a Muslim, or to a mosque. It was a huge politicized legal conflict. And when the verdict came out, and of course, the court, given where India is today, gave it to the Hindus. So we covered that for it, and so like then every news coverage around it was either it's good or bad, right? And so then we did a story where we had a Muslim scholar and a Hindu Brahmin scholar each talk about why they believe that was right or wrong. And that's how we cover it. And that's what we hope to do a lot more of. And I think that is really important, because how do we as a community and as a culture, we learn to have conversation from media. Unfortunately, that is the world we live in today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because we are watching these news, I don't know if you have this in the UK, but in India, there's this huge popular, like very yelling news debates. Like, do you guys know about this at all? Do you have this in the UK, or are you guys well behaved?
I mean, we're not well behaved, but we don't have quite the same thing. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
Because you've watched it. Some people in the audience might
Cooking
not, but
head.
I don't even,
Yeah.
I don't even know exactly. There'll be like 15 people on screen and everyone's yelling at each other, and debates are on purpose made into bigger conflicts to sensationalize and sell the news in that manner, right? But like, it's when we watch that, then as a society and a culture, that's the kind of conversations we then aspire to and have. And so if we are to change that, then we have to change what we, at least have examples of what a different kind of conversation can look like. And so then I think the podcast, like all of the content we create as part of that vertical, and that's the part we wish to do more of. But it's so much work. Like sometimes I'm like, should we just quit everything and become a full-time media company? And you know what? Maybe, but we don't know yet.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. We have, our conversation has been fantastic and broad ranging, and I have hosted incredibly badly because we've run over a hell of a lot, but that's okay.
No, I've been talking a lot too, because I've been happy talking to you. So
I know, I've loved
you're
it.
good.
So I just want to say, well, I want to just ask the final question really is, how can university students and staff support the work both with Kranti and with Boltiband?
Um, so with both Kranti and Boltiband, I've always believed, I haven't ever believed in like job descriptions, or putting that out there. I think if you are interested in the vision, and I've talked about the vision of both the organizations on this call, if you believe in that, then write to me. And what we always do is we find a specific role that is a learning experience for you and is helpful for us and will help us grow. And we've worked in this way from like 12-year-old volunteers to like 85-year-old is our oldest volunteer, who lives in the UK actually.
Wow.
So yeah, just if you believe in the vision, if you feel passionate about the vision, forget the work we are doing. You're welcome to come tell us we're doing something badly and tell us how to improve it too. Which is why I don't believe in putting out job descriptions. So just write to me.
Cool. Super cool, Trina. Thank you so much. You can find Kranti on their own website. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all of the social media channels. Boltiband is on all the same platforms too, but we will put all of the links to all of the social media channels and their websites in this event. You'll also find it on a Facebook post when we follow up. If you're new to the Social Impact Lab, please subscribe to get the latest updates and opportunities from us, including our Spark India program, where Trina and Kranti and Boltiband will be featured. The deadline for that for you undergraduate students is just 8 days away, and you can do that by visiting our website sutton.ac.uk/SI Lab. Until the next time, Trina, I just want to say a really big thank you for this has been so much fun. I've learned so much. I'm sure all the students have learned so much. And I am anticipating an avalanche of interest in your work. So thank you.
I'd be so happy. Thank you.
So
Thank you for hosting me.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. So until the next time, everyone, take care of yourselves and join us in building a new world in which we can all thrive. Thank you and good night.